Thank you for coming out. My name is John Hanke. I spent 10 years at Google, working on Google Maps and Google Earth mainly. Thank you. We started this little group inside of Google called Niantic a few years ago. At least one person here has heard of it. Doing some experiments in augmented reality, at least our take on augmented reality. And we actually launched a couple of products. I want to talk about those products and kind of what we learned from them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the new thing that we're working on. So we actually spun our group out of Google in October of last year. We raised about $30 million from investors, including Google, but mainly including Nintendo and the Pokemon company. So we've been working on this project called Pokemon Go. So are there any Ingress players in the room, just so I kind of know who I'm talking to? Cool. Has anybody heard of Pokemon Go? Awesome. Okay. Well, I got a special treat for you guys. I'm actually going to show you a little bit, some screenshots, and a little bit of animation from Pokemon Go towards the latter part of the presentation. It's never been shown publicly before, so this is the first time anybody's ever seen that. But before we get there, we're going to talk about AR, but I can't really talk about AR without talking about VR. So obviously, VR is everywhere. It's pretty cool. I think people are going to build some amazing applications for virtual reality. So I don't want to knock it. Is anybody working on VR in the room? Is there anybody from Facebook or Samsung? Or I don't want to offend any VR people. I think it's going to be great. I am a little bit worried about it. I mean, not to be too bleak, but are there any parents out there? A few. Like I've got 3 kids, and so kind of battling with my kids over screen time is actually a huge issue. And I don't know a parent today that doesn't kind of have that struggle, not to mention my own battle with screen time and getting outside. So, there's a little bit of risk in VR. It is a sedentary kind of activity, and it does intermediate all of our social interactions through the computer. So I wouldn't say that you can't be social through VR, but you're doing it in a way that's not quite organic. It's not quite natural. It all has to go through video and chat and et cetera. So I personally am just kind of more interested in augmented reality. I guess there's a question of definition. What is augmented reality? We've all seen Oculus. We've all seen the Samsung product, but augmented reality is a little bit more vague. Just in terms of a definition, VR, clearly it's about replacing reality as it exists with some synthetic world that you enter and you're there. You're transported there. A space station, alien world, whatever. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is something that's designed to, at least in my view, I guess people might debate this, but be always on. It's something that we would take with us wherever that we go in the world, and we would interact with, kind of come in and out of it. It wouldn't be session-based. It would just be helping us all the time, making our lives a little bit better. So because of that, when some of the marketing people and industry observers look at the two opportunities, there are a lot of people out there that think that long-term, augmented reality is actually a much bigger commercial opportunity. And when you think about it, it kind of makes intuitive sense. In VR, you're going to spend however much time you spend there, 3 hours a week or 3 hours a day, but it's a session and you have to do that and only that. Kind of like I draw an analogy between a personal computer and your mobile phone. So a PC, you sit down, you have a session, you do it. Your phone, you're kind of in and out of the phone all day long. That's what augmented reality is going to be more like, in my opinion. It's something that's going to make shopping, socializing, games, just better, lightweight sessions that you come in and out of. So, there are people working on augmented reality glasses. So that makes it, a little bit more confusing because some people think augmented reality and they think it's a pair of goggles that you put on your face. So Magic Leap's working on their thing. There are actually a number of other companies that are working on their version of AR glasses. Google kind of did its lightweight version of that with Google Glass. But I would also argue that in terms of hardware, augmented reality is going to be much more evolutionary. It's not going to be the launch of a specific device, but rather it is a collection of devices that are going to extend the capabilities of the cell phone add new capabilities to get information in a kind of frictionless way, provide input devices that are better for gaming, input out devices that are better for gaming. So, you know, things like Fitbit, I would consider kind of point one of an AR device, right? And, you know, Fitbit kind of won the wearables war. There are a lot of more expensive things out there that were going to do a lot more. Fitbit sold 20 million units, went public, hugely successful by producing something that was cheap, it worked, and it did something that people saw value in. Apple Watch, you know, some people dismiss the Apple Watch as not being useful as a, you know, a fashion thing. I actually think that the ability to get information passively without taking your phone out and kind of staring at it, but just glancing at your wrist is going to prove to be really valuable. And it's a stepping stone on the way to AR. I'm really excited about, there's a new class of Bluetooth earbuds coming out. I don't know if any of you guys have followed a Kickstarter campaign by a company called Braggy. I think that's the way you pronounce it. I've never heard them say it. But these are different than the Bluetooth thing that you see the guy in Starbucks wearing when he's doing his conference call, and it's really annoying and nobody wants to be seen wearing. These are designed to be unobtrusive, to fit in the ear, and actually to pass through ambient sound through the device. So you can actually hear what's going on around you, but you can add into that information. So you can talk to Siri, you can talk to Google, you can have hints, you can have, you know, a computer whispering useful information into your ear, basically. So I'm super excited about that. The rumor is that Apple is going to get behind wireless Bluetooth earbuds in a huge way next year. I don't have any insider info on that, but that's the rumor, and I think that would make a lot of sense. In terms of gaming, along with Pokemon Go, we announced the Pokemon Go Plus, which you see here. It's a very lightweight Bluetooth paired device that works with your phone, extends the capability of the phone. It lets you know when Pokemon are around. You can interact with it. Affordable, cool, and I think, again, a stepping stone to the sort of full-on goggles version of AR that will eventually get here. So, you know, I would be so presumptuous as to actually offer my own definition of AR, I guess, and you guys are welcome to debate me about it afterwards if you want. But I call it a style of computing. Note, you know, not a specific device, but a style of computing that provides user benefit by enhancing our experience with the real world in situ while we're having these experiences. So these are pieces of technology, web services, even things within the environment themselves. I didn't talk about the Arduino board on this slide, but I forgot to mention it, but it's there for a purpose because there's AR from kind of the inside out, which is something that we carry with us, but there's also AR kind of from the outside in, where the environment is smart because it has embedded computing connected to the network that maybe knows that I'm there and can respond to it. And I'm going to show you guys, oh, I'm still here. I'll show you guys an example of something that we did with a really cool art installation in Ingress. I have some video from that I'll show a bit later. So, you know, I think we're going to get to AR in kind of an evolutionary way. I would actually argue that the killer apps for AR are already being built. And if any of you guys are software developers or involved in sponsoring software developers, involved in strategy, I think the right strategy is to start building the apps now with the hardware that exists now, because you can do cool stuff on phones that exist today and with some of those accessory devices that I was just laying out there. And then as more and more robust AR hardware comes to market, you will be ready for it. I think one of the killer apps for AR is personal navigation. You know, we've gone from the era where we printed out the MapQuest map. I don't know if any of you all remember that. There was a day when you actually carried some paper around with you to figure out where to go. Now we have our phones, we've got Google Maps, or maybe use a different service, Apple Maps, but you know where you are. It answers this fundamental question that we have about our world, which we've had since the times of cavemen. Where am I, and how do I get where I want to go? And it's a question that we kind of don't have to worry about anymore. You can airdrop yourself almost anywhere on the planet, and if you can get a data plan or get access to data, you can navigate around. You know, just a few years ago, I was in Tokyo getting lost on a regular basis because none of the signs are in English, and not too many people speak English in Tokyo. But now with Google Maps, you can wander wherever you want to go. There are futuristic versions of that. It's going to continue to evolve, of course. The helmet pictured here is a real product in development at BMW. So it's an augmented reality motorcycle helmet. I think it's a great idea. I wish I had thought of it, you know, because the computing and the display fit naturally in the helmet. It looks really cool. It's not like you're wearing this weird thing strapped to your head. And it does something really useful. You're riding a motorcycle, You kind of need to keep your hands on the handlebars. You don't want to be looking down at something, so puts that map information right in your field of view. Really smart step on the way to this AR future. And the people making glass, various versions of the goggles, they all have their concept videos, and they almost all show some form of navigation. So I think it's going to be a really important app in that future. The other one is place finding. So what I mean by that is stuff like Yelp, which we kind of take for granted now. But a key augmented reality app is just knowing what are all the businesses, things, structures in my vicinity. Tell me what the internet knows about them. I don't know anything about it if I'm walking through a neighborhood of Austin that's new to me. I used to live here 20 years ago, but it's all new to me now. So is this place any good? How much does it cost? What do the locals think? That used to be hard to get to information. Now it's available through an app that we look at. We pull out, we manipulate the UI, we get some information. But I think you can imagine where it's going. If we have a passive display, maybe that's your Apple Watch, maybe it's something a little bit more complicated, that's just constantly streaming in that information. That's pretty awesome. Anywhere you are, anything you look at, you're an expert, and you can make decisions with confidence about where to go eat, what to buy, where to go have fun. There are 4 of these categories, by the way. The third one, I think, is social. So if any of you guys downloaded the South by app on your phone, you have this really kind of rudimentary AR social app on it. So I don't know how many people are actually using it, but I think it's an interesting first step. So you can say, hey, here are some people that are going to be at this conference that I think I might want to network with, whatever that means. But the app will tell you when they're nearby, and you can find each other and meet. There is a cool app in France that takes that into the romantic realm. Married, 3 kids, don't use this app, but it will tell you if you pass somebody on the street who's also using the app, if your profiles match or whatever. So if somebody catches your eye, you can sort of connect, which I think is interesting. And then when the sci-fi people and the filmmakers get a hold of that concept, it goes to something like you see in this movie, Creative Control, which I haven't seen yet. I'm dying to see. I'm told it's sort of Woody Allen meets Neuromancer or something. But that's always a feature of this vision, that you can look around and you can know about the people that are around you, and you see Yelp-like ratings of them, or you see their interests or what have you. And I think the groundwork is being laid now for that. Those apps are not about the display that sits in front of your face. It's about all of the information and systems that exist on the cloud that really are going to make those things magical. And if you want to have that experience ready when the AR hardware hits, you better start working on it now. We were kind of lucky with Google Maps in that, we built that for the desktop, and we spent a lot of money on it. And we had this working desktop system. And then Steve Jobs called up and said, hey, I'm working on this kind of secret project thing, and I'd like to get your help putting maps on it. And I called him back, and we agreed to do that. And within 6 months, we had, one of the killer apps for the smartphone was essentially repurposed from the desktop version. And I think, that's the kind of dynamic that's going to be at work here with augmented reality. Some of the visionaries take it even further. This is, the full-on, I don't know if you guys have seen this, it's on YouTube. But this is the full-on dating coaching app. So all the way through the encounter, he's getting advice about how to approach this woman, and it all goes horribly wrong in the end, as well it should. And then finally, games. So I assume some of you guys are into games. This is the gaming part of South by. I think, often with new hardware, games are the thing that drives adoption. They were really important for the iPhone, really important for lots of new platforms, and for augmented reality, I think they're right at the heart of it. So that's why we've been experimenting with Ingress. I'm glad to see some Ingress players here. And that's why I think Pokemon Go is a really important step towards this future of AR. There's also another great app out there, not to just promote my stuff. There's an app out there called Zombies Run, which is an audio-only augmented reality app. So while you're running, zombies are chasing you. You have to complete missions to get away. Really cool, clever use of today's tech. And then, we can imagine, where that's going to end up. People like Magic Leap are showing us what their version of AR hardware will be capable of. I haven't been to Florida for the demo yet, but people who've seen it are very convinced that this is going to be pretty freaking cool when it comes to market. So basic premise is start building now if you want to be positioned to really take advantage of AR. I want to share some learnings that we've gotten from the apps that we've built. We built an app called Field Trip. Anybody ever try Field Trip? Was not as viral and successful as Ingress. The basic idea was what we called accidental history. So the idea was that you could wander through town, you could be on your way to work, on your way to school, and information about historical places, cultural things, the statue in the park, you never quite knew what it was, that would just seamlessly be shown to you on your phone or later on Google Glass as you walked through the world. So I thought, at least I thought it was a pretty awesome idea, and it was a pretty cool app, but we hit some roadblocks, which I'll talk in more detail about. But I want to show this video because I think it kind of conveys a sense of what is possible. This was like a promo piece that we did for the glass version of the product.
Huh. That's cool. Let's see some more of that.
Come on, guys, let's get this show on the road.
It looks so quaint to see the guy.
My game's in slow motion. Guys, tired already? Hey, I got popsicles! Yes. Where are you?
Google took a lot of heat for glass. I mean, I think it was a brave experiment, I guess. I mean, it's funny to see the guy wearing glass. When you look at some of the new AR goggles that are getting a lot of hype right now, I mean, glass looks absolutely beautiful and svelte compared to some of these things. But I think it just goes to show you how far we're going to have to go to invent a computer that you can put on your face that's actually going to be socially acceptable. But that was a real product. It actually worked in the way that was shown there. Those are real screenshots from the glass product. And when it worked, it was amazing. I took a trip to Italy with my family at one point. I did not wear the glass version, but I had my phone with me. And as I was walking through Rome, information about all the historical sites was just appearing on my phone effortlessly as I walked through the city. It was fantastic. So I really want to come back and do more with Field Trip in the future, but for now, it's not something we're doing a lot of active development on. We tried to do speech to the user, so I really wanted an application that would sort of whisper in your ear and kind of tell you these things as you're walking around. That proved really challenging to get right. It's actually really hard to know when it's okay to talk to somebody as a computer. So we had situations where the phone was talking from the person's pocket or from their purse, which is not a great user experience. It's like, is that you talking or is that your pocket or what's going on here? We tried to use notifications, which I think get misused today. The notification framework on mobile phones, everything's a notification, zillions of notifications. It's really, that is designed for something that's going to interrupt you from what's going on and tell you something really important. It's really not the right thing for this sort of passive delivery of kind of contextual information. So there's work to be done there. You really need some kind of always-on UI, but when it works, it really works. So some interesting takeaways. It wasn't a complete loss for us. The product is still there and people enjoy it, and we've been able to take that information and actually feed it into the other product that we built, which is called Ingress. So for those of you that don't know it, it's a global location-based game. You seek out portals, which are historical markers and works of public art, the same kinds of things that Field Trip was telling you about. We thought it would be cool if people discovered them. We built sort of a game incentive around that. You join one of two global teams, the Enlightened and the Resistance. I'm sure we have representatives from both here. And they battle it out to control these portals and link them together and essentially try to control the whole world. And you can see from the global map that this truly is a global game that's being played out all around the world by people. We backed it up with an immersive story that's told through social media, so it's coming at you in the form of an alternate reality game, intercepted phone calls and secret documents that tell you the backstory. We have a bi-weekly YouTube show where we feature the exploits of agents around the world and we advance the storyline. And we also have comic books, graphic novels, and we recently took an investment from Fuji Television in Japan, and we're exploring some other media exploitations of Ingress. So I know some of you are players, some of you aren't, so this is a 60-second video that just kind of shows the idea of the game. This was something we did for our iPhone.
Portal in range. Resonator deployed. Portal attack detected. Portal offline. Enemy agents in your area.
I know that there are others out there.
You just have to know where to look and know what you're seeing.
What if they're already among us, but we don't realize it?
You can catch the truth in a glimpse, and it vanishes. They are coming, and I must be prepared to work with them or fight them.
Deployment failed. Portal captured.
So in the video, we've taken some liberties with the way the game looks. It's really the way we imagine it to be. The game's actually played on your phone. But that's the future that we're building towards, and we want to eventually enable with augmented reality hardware, which is why I am excited about the goggles that people are working on. I heard some laughter in the room. The social thing there between people and the game, it was a huge surprise of the game, is it ended up being an incredibly social experience. When you're drawing people out of the house, off the couch, out into the real world, people are meeting and getting to know one another, making friendships, and so on. I'm going to talk a lot more about that because I think that's one of the key sort of takeaways from the experience of what augmented reality is all about. In the past, I've talked about, people get tattoos of the logos of the game. People rent helicopters and airplanes to go get to hard-to-get-to portals to get an advantage for their team. People climb mountains. The first thing in social media I got this morning was from an Ingress player. What's the hashtag there? Places Ingress took me, or Places Ingress takes you. She's on the top of a mountain in Mexico with some Ingress players playing the game down there. So it's really inspired people to go out and do some amazing things. So what we did is to put some numbers around that, because we heard all these anecdotal stories and we have all these great pictures coming on social media of the things that people are doing together. We went out and surveyed our level 8 and above players. So in Ingress, you start at 1, you can go all the way to 16. So we surveyed 8 and above about some of these topics that we thought were interesting. So we started with social, with friendship, because one of the things we hear over and over again is that, oh, I met new friends, like real friends, not sort of friends online, but real friends through the game. So we asked them about that, and 91% of these people who were level 8 and above, by the way, this data has never been shown publicly before, said that they had met a new friend through the game. 33% said they had met 20 new friends, and 15% had met 50 or more friends. So people are forming these webs of social connections, which I think is absolutely awesome. Some of those go beyond friendship. So we also hear a lot about people meeting and dating. We certainly did not design the game as a dating application, but that happens, right? So this is a couple in Japan. They actually met playing the game. They got engaged on stage at one of the events that we hold over there. But there's been a fair amount of that. 30% of these higher level agents had dated at least one person that they met through the game. So I think that's pretty cool. It's resulted in a number of marriages. So in the old days, you heard about marriages on the MMOs, like World of Warcraft, where the two avatars would kind of get married. But here, it's an MMO kind of in the same sense, but you're meeting in real life. So if you meet somebody and you're having a relationship, it's a real relationship, and it has real outcomes. In some cases, several of those couples have now had babies. I just think it's awesome. It was definitely not expected when we launched the game. The other thing that people tell us is it gets them outside, and they're going places they haven't been before and seeing places they haven't seen before. So we asked about that, and the answer came back, not unexpectedly, that 90% of the people at this level who are playing had traveled all the way to another city in the act of playing the game. 35% had been to more than 10 cities, and 5% had been to more than 50 cities in the course of playing the game. So, it's kind of, some of the players will call it a lifestyle, like they are out and doing some wild things. There's a lot of road trips. This was one around a big chunk of Norway. We asked how far have you gone while you're doing this. Almost half had gone at least 100 kilometers. 15% had been more than 1,000 kilometers while playing the game. People don't just drive, they actually take planes, if you can believe that. Like, people are buying a plane ticket to go somewhere to further the interests of their faction in Ingress. So 19% of the people playing had actually taken an airline flight in order to play the game. And they're not just traveling domestically. So 19% had also traveled to another country specifically to play the game. And I was at an event recently in Seattle, and I know there's a player here who's based in LA who was up there, and there was players there from China, all over the place, who had flown into that event specifically to participate. 9% of the players have actually traveled to another continent to play the game, and that's on the left side, or your left, my right. There's a couple, and they went to Egypt and rendezvoused with some other Ingress players there. They traveled from the UK, and they got this great kind of insider tour of Egypt because they had these fellow Ingress players who met them and took them to all these historical sites that you normally don't get to go to. So there's a really awesome global community there that players are tapping into. People really get into it, and they stay up late. Often they stay out all night. So we asked, how often have you, how many of you have stayed out all night playing the game? 68% of them had stayed out all night at least once playing Ingress. And the shocker for me was that 10% of these people had stayed out all night 50 or more times. So just kind of getting motivated to look at the world in a different way and do stuff that maybe you hadn't thought of doing before. People spend money while they're doing these things. 17% said they had spent at least $1,000 on their Ingress adventures. And finally, the last point, exercise. So tons of people wrote to us and told us that they had lost weight or they were getting in shape. And typically, these are folks who aren't the Nike, like, I want to be an Olympic athlete, kind of people. They're just kind of normal folks who maybe aren't in a regular exercise regime. And this has proven to be the extra little incentive that kind of pushed them to get out of the house and to walk and exercise on a regular basis. So 60% of the people that that responded, these level 8 and above players, had actually lost weight while playing the game. We also asked about the diversion from other kind of sedentary activities like watching TV or sitting in front of a computer screen. And 85% of them said that they had reduced that amount of activity by at least 1 hour. 33% said more than 3, and 9% said that more than 6 hours. So not only are people going out and getting fit, but they're doing less of the other things. So really interesting stuff. Now, for those of you that don't play, I thought, if I was going to give this data, that some people might be questioning, well, what is it about the game? What are you actually doing that's going to cause you to go to another city or country or continent or take an airplane flight to play? So I wanted to walk through an operation that some Ingress players did. These go on all the time. to kind of show you how the game works and what motivates people to do this. We had nothing to do with this. This is a player-run activity. It happened last June. These are literally reported daily, ops that people do in various places around the world. I picked this one because it was one of the bigger ones in terms of the territory that it covered. It involved about 150 agents, so totally self-organized thing by 150 agents. And basically, what they did was to capture portals in Svalbard, Norway, in Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands, a place I didn't know the name of, even though I worked on Google Maps for 7 years until I read about this op, and a little tiny island off the coast of Kuwait. So they strategized to capture these 3 portals so that they could basically, the way it works in Ingress is if you link these portals together in a triangle, you capture the area in between. So they were going to capture all of Europe by this very involved operation. And so they met in Bratislava. We had an event there last year. We have Ingress events in various cities around the world almost every month. And a lot of agents transported keys there. So to link a portal that's far away, this is kind of an interesting thing. Sorry, it's a little bit detailed, but you need a key to that portal that's distant from you. It's a digital object, and you can only get the digital object by visiting the real place. You can transport the digital object with you in your phone and give it to another person, but only if you're in the same place. So people have to transport these digital objects around across many countries in some cases in order to pull off these operations. And so there are these networks to transport these keys around that are very reminiscent of, the kind of contraband networks that you might read about in the newspaper, that people are using to move other things around. But it's harmless. It's, it's Ingress. So, for example, they needed keys from these portals in Kuwait. So some agents moved the keys from Kuwait to Abu Dhabi, and then those were flown by an agent who went from Abu Dhabi to a location unknown in Europe with them, specifically for that purpose. So he's buying a ticket to fly to Europe from Abu Dhabi to transport these keys to his team. So as the operation unfolded, a lot of the agents were from the Netherlands, so they had met in Utrecht, and then from there, a whole group of them flew to Fuerteventura because they thought, hey, this will be a fun place to go, to get some sun, to go to the beach, and we're going to do this awesome, massive Ingress op at the same time. So they flew 3,000 kilometers for their part of this. There was a whole nother set of agents that were in Kuwait. So you can see them pictured here. They had to get to this island, Failaka Island, another place that I had not heard of until I was reading about this operation. It's 25 kilometers off the coast of Kuwait. This was during Ramadan, so there was no regular ferry service, so they chartered a boat specifically to take them 25 kilometers offshore to complete their side of the operation. Pretty awesome. There was another set of agents that flew from the Netherlands to Svalbard. So this is almost to the freaking North Pole. So they bought their plane tickets and they flew up there to control the portals in Norway. And you can see this awesome picture. A lot of people assume when they hear about Ingress that it's all male gamers, 18 to 30 years old or whatever. The demographics is actually all over the place, and it does include a ton of female gamers. In addition to the corner points to connect two portals together, you have to have a clear path between them. So sorry to get into so many of the details of the game, but that means that if there's any blocking links in between, you have to find people on your team who live in these obscure places in between to go out and knock down the blocking links. This is really cool because it means that people who live basically in the middle of nowhere get called up by their faction to go out and do this like super important operation. So in this case, an agent in Scotland responded to the call and went out to these remote southern Scottish islands to knock out some of the portals there. So he wrote this up. He took a whole series of buses, 3 different ferries to get to these islands, knocked out the enemy portals. This was a 3-day adventure for him, and at the end of it, it was at night, and the only way he could get home was by walking 15 miles in the dark to get to the point where the ferry picked up. So, hats off to that guy. I think it's crazy. Another example was they had to clear links in Egypt. So, how do you find somebody near the Red Sea in Egypt to take down this portal there? They ended up connecting with a German Ingress player. There are lots of Egyptian players too, but in this case, they connected with a German Ingress player who was on vacation at this other place I'd never heard of before called Hurghada, which apparently is this big dive destination on the Red Sea. So this guy was there. He gets contacted, gets sent out on this thing. He's like, oh, of course I'll do it. He gets a cab late at night, and the cab takes him 20 kilometers to go. I don't know how much that costs in Egypt. 20 kilometers to go knock out this portal. It's in an international hotel. He can't get in because of the security situation. He's not a guest, so they won't let him into the hotel. So the cab driver takes him back. And the cab driver says, you're crazy for doing this for a game. Like, what, you're out of your mind. And to prove he's out of his mind, he went back the next day again and talked his way into the hotel and took down the offending portal so that the link could go through. There were players in Russia that got involved. There were players in Israel that got involved. And it was all said and done. They connected the portals and the 3 endpoints, and they basically created a massive score for the resistance. So, that's the kind of gameplay, real-world augmented reality gameplay that you can create with this kind of approach, and the effect that it has on people is, I don't know, I think impressive. Okay, so 2 other things about Ingress. I wanted to come back to the field trip tie-in just to kind of show you how these things evolve. You go out and try stuff, it doesn't all work, but invariably there's some learning from it, and you get some benefit from it. So in the case of field trip, we had all this really awesome data about the history and art and architecture of places. So we pulled that into Ingress, and we created a tool that lets players make missions for other players. So, in a lot of games, you go in, you get assigned a mission, you got to go kill the dragon and, get the treasure in the sort of cliche RPG case. So in the Ingress case, you can stitch together these historic places, artistic places, bars, brew pubs, music venues, whatever you're into, that if that information exists within the field trip database, you can make a mission for players who have to go and visit those locations. Now there have been hundreds of thousands of those created, and we now have mission days around the world. We've had several dozen of those at this point, and thousands of agents have come to the mission days and basically gone on kind of like historic walking tours of cities around the world, but while they're playing Ingress. So gamers who are playing this sci-fi alternate reality game are also learning about the history of Paris when they show up for the mission day. So a cool way that these things kind of fed into one another. The other thing that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to come back to is this idea of alternate reality from the outside in. Basically turning on the environment through embedded computing, having that connected through the cloud so that it can interact with a user who is physically present at that location so that you can influence it. You can also do that through Bluetooth, beacons, and other mechanisms, but in our case, we actually did it through the cloud. So I think the possibilities here are not even imagined by most people yet, but you've got displays, giant display walls, interactive LED art that's popping up all over the place. What can you do with that in terms of interacting with people and what they're doing with their phone or when they're physically present at these locations? So we got approached by this artist who had been brought on board by the city of San Jose to basically construct this massive LED computerized installation in an underpass in San Jose. It actually connects downtown San Jose with the arena where the Sharks play, and it's used by a lot of people, and it was kind of like dank and uninviting, so they spent a bunch of money to make it interesting. And so he had read about what we were doing with Ingress, and he said, well, it'd be kind of cool to connect that. Like, maybe it could be a portal, and when people are playing the game, we could change the lights all around whenever they take control of the portal. And we thought that was a really cool idea. So we did it, and it's going to come online sometime in the next month or so. But just to show you what I think, we'll show you what it's going to look like. This is some video from the installation kind of being put through its paces before the Ingress connection isn't in place yet. So this is real footage of the installation. So all of the LEDs throughout are all individually addressable. So anything you can imagine in terms of animating them or changing the color is possible by programming them. It's connected to weather. It's connected to sensors that know when people are passing through the underpass. And as I mentioned, it soon will be connected to Ingress. So when the blue team controls it, it will be blue. Whenever the green team comes in and throws it up, it will flash and transform to green. So yeah, augmented reality from the outside in. Huge potential there. I thought there might be people here from like companies and brands. I don't know if that's true or not, but I did want to also explain that there can be a business model for this stuff. In case somebody is wondering if is this just a fun way to spend a lot of money. We've actually been able to incorporate brands deeply into the product. One example is SoftBank in Japan. So with SoftBank, all of their stores, think of them as like Apple stores or Verizon stores, cell phone carrier in Japan. They sell a lot of computer gear as well. They're all portals in Ingress. So players can go there, can harvest cool items. We actually made an Ingress item specifically for SoftBank, the SoftBank Ultra Link, which lets you extend the linking distance of a portal. And so it basically drives foot traffic to these stores and drives engagement within the stores. The business model is a cost per visit model, so we get paid based on the number of people that visit these commercial locations. So I think it's a really cool way to pay for a game like this. Doesn't feel intrusive. You don't have to change the mechanics of the game to put in a lot of paywalls to drive in-app purchase. And our sponsors love it. It's it kind of cuts through the advertising clutter, and it's really significant, real, organic engagement with users. So bottom line is big takeaway, unexpected takeaway for us for Ingress was that AR games can really change the behavior of people in positive ways. If you're thoughtful about game design and how you set things up, it can do some cool stuff. Promoting meaningful social interactions, encouraging people to travel near and far, and to see what's right in front of their eyes, in the case of undiscovered cool stuff right in your city, and promoting exercise and physical activity. So good stuff. So how can we take that further? Our focus now is, in addition to Ingress, is on Pokemon Go. Nobody had heard of Ingress when we launched it. Kind of found its audience through time. It's now been running for 3 years. Pokemon, a lot of people know about Pokemon. One of the most beloved gaming franchises in the world. And we are going to turn it into a real world game so that when you hunt for Pokemon, you're not just hunting through your DS. You have to go out into the park, you have to take a walk, you have to stroll down by Town Lake and find the Pokemon there. Or perhaps you take your kids there so they can find the Pokemon there. So this is a screenshot of the actual game. It's not concept art. We are preparing to go into a beta test in Japan shortly. So we just started taking applications for that, and we'll go into beta test in the US soon. Same concept as Ingress and Field Trip in that the places that you interact with are in many cases historical landmarks, works, public artworks, places that are interesting to go to. One of our big ideas is to create incentives to draw people out of the house and get them into public spaces and to help people come to know and hopefully love the towns and communities where they live in a new way. So Pokemon follows right along in those lines. So whenever you go up to one of these locations, that it would be a portal in Ingress in the world of Pokemon Go, it's a Pokestop, you interact with the game in order to acquire things. So there's an inducement to go to these cool locations. This is a pretty famous fountain in San Francisco. There was a time when public fountains were very important to public health because they were a way to get clean drinking water to people. And so cities put a lot of effort and energy into constructing these fountains to keep people from getting dysentery and other bad things. So anyway, it's a historical landmark in San Francisco. And when you're playing Pokemon Go, you go up to the fountain and you'll kind of see what happens. So you zoom in and you actually interact a little bit and you acquire items that you need to play the game. So farming that you might be familiar with from other games where you're going around and acquiring items, in Pokemon Go, it's taking a walk through town, taking a walk down by the lake, and visiting the historical markers along the way and harvesting the items you need to advance in the game. So, of course, it wouldn't be Pokemon without Pokemon. So you'll encounter Pokemon while you're out doing this, and you'll be able to capture them. So a core mechanic of the game is to try to capture all the Pokemon. They're distributed all around the world. Pokemon have different habitats, so some Pokemon like water, some like mountains. So they live in the places that they ought to live, which means that you will have to go to a wide variety of places to find them all. That encounter I'm going to show you, and this is also the first time this has ever been shown. So you notify So he goes into my Pokédex, and there's other stuff you can do with the Pokemon, with gyms and competition, but I'm not going to go into that today. You'll have to sign up for the beta to see the rest of that good stuff. I wanted to just come back and explain the Pokemon Go Plus device a little bit more, because I use that as an example of low-cost consumer AR device. It's a bridge between where we are now and these AR goggles of the future. So the Pokemon Go Plus device is built by Nintendo, will be launched along with the game, and it's something that you can use yourself, or you could give it to a kid, for example. Go out for a walk in the park, you give the Go Plus device to your child, and it vibrates and flashes when you're near a Pokemon or a Pokestop, and you can interact with it by pushing a button in order to capture a Pokemon or acquire items. So you don't always have to be pulling your phone out and looking at your phone to play the game. If you're mainly focused on, okay, I'm going to get my 5-kilometer walk in today, or you just want to kind of move through the park with your kid and you don't want them, staring at the phone the whole time, you can actually do a lot of game actions just with this device, which is nice because it's heads up, meaning that you can look around and take in your environment, which is kind of one of the whole purposes of this kind of a game. So we're really excited about it. Key thing is it works, it uses today's technology, and it doesn't cost $1,000. It can be a very affordable thing that makes playing games outside a lot more fun. So to wrap up and bring this back to kind of the beginning, there are people out there that are kind of fearful of where all this technology is taking us, and where games and VR and even AR, people are concerned about what that's going to look like. And people have these visions that it's going to be like the Matrix, and we're just going to be plugged in, and it's going to be bad. I don't share that perspective. I think that there is a way that we can use technology that's very positive. I would close by talking about Agent Trigger Happy Nana. So Agent Nana lives up in Seattle. She's been playing the game almost ever since we launched. I believe she's now 80. When I first met her, she was 78. She got introduced to the game by her son because she was recovering from a hip operation and she had diabetes. And her son thought, hey, this is a game that's encouraging me to walk more. Maybe it will help my mom. And so he got her to start playing. And she's now walked over 1,500 kilometers playing the game. She plays daily. And she's beloved by the community in Seattle. They all know her. We had a big event up there, and she baked apple pies for her team, and she was handing out slices of apple pies to people. And you see her here with one of the players that's her friend, and this guy's a pedicab driver. He's like kind of the Burning Man type, and this grandma type, and they're buddies, Really cool to see people from different cultures, Egypt, Israel, Russia, Germany, and different walks of life, different socioeconomic backgrounds being brought together by a game. Really cool stuff. Closing thought, people have been thinking about this for a long time in the realm of computer science. So we are building on the vision that people started imagining a couple of decades ago. The guy that I think got this right way before anybody else was this guy, Mark Weiser, who is deceased, but he worked at Xerox PARC, and he described what he called ubiquitous computing. And it is basically the world that we're coming to live in now, where computing is not a mainframe as it was, in the era that he sort of came of age in, or even a desktop computer, or even a mobile phone. It's a world where there's computing in every surface, in every interaction that we have. It is a digital heartbeat that pervades the physical world. And when it reaches full fruition, it will fade into the background, and it won't be an intrusive, clunky device strapped to your head. It's just going to be there, and it's going to be part of almost everything that we do. And that's where we're headed with AR. And it's really exciting to jump in early and start using some of these products, and also to, if you're on the development side, to start building for it. I think this is a real future. Not to knock VR, but I think AR is where it's at. Cool. That's the talk. I think we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody's got any, hit me with them. You can ask about Ingress. You can ask about Pokemon Go, but I probably won't tell you much. The guy said he wants you. Sorry, your name is? Jose. Jose said go to the mic so people can hear on the recording. So
I come from my hometown has like a lot of historical spots to it, but nobody ever goes to them. Nobody even knows they exist, even from the people in the town, which is kind of ridiculous. If you were like a town like that wanted to add these historical spots to either Ingress or to Pokemon Go as a place that people could load up, what's like the addition process? And then also like, how do you keep the quality up? Because I assume people would just start adding like McDonald's, to it, like brands.
Yeah,
and stuff.
it was a key thing that we had to solve with Ingress. So in the beginning, we took a database of the historical markers from the United States, which was incomplete, but it was the best data set we could get. And we seeded the game board with those historical markers. And we had a way of finding photos of public artwork from a Google geotagged photo library. So statues were the other kind of key thing. We also added museums, libraries, and as a nod to the small towns of the world, post offices and fire stations, because every small town's got one. But then we allowed players to add places that they found interesting, historically significant in their own communities. And that took the number of portals from around 250,000 to many millions. We got a lot more submissions than we could process because you can't just accept everything that gets submitted or people would abuse that. So we had human beings filtering the submissions and trying to determine if they fit our criteria of is it historic, is it artistic, is it safe, then those things would go ahead and become portals. So we actually shut that off when we spun out of Google because it was really expensive to pay all the people who were reviewing the portals. So at this very moment, you can't submit new portals, but we have been working on a way to let users vote on new submissions so that we can turn that back on. And yeah, we've had a number of people who are kind of amateur historians or just like civic advocates for their towns and communities get involved and come in and add their historic sites. And I think it's great. And people do discover them once they're in. We hear those stories all the time of, wow, I never knew that there was this place where General Grant marched through my town or whatever. So yeah, I would love to let you be able to add those locations very soon. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you. You mentioned a little bit about getting started on programming in AR dev kits, and there's like 30-something out there kind of already, anywhere from being announced to actually being produced and shipped. If I wanted to bring something to like some young game designers or programmers who are at least slightly interested in AR, in your experience, what are some of your favorite dev kits? Anything like Daiquiri, or would you just want to stick with Google? Or what are your thoughts on getting people introduced to AR?
There are probably people I know there are people on my development team who are way better at answering that question than I would be in terms of the developer environment. If you're asking about hardware, there's a ton of hardware out there in terms of different devices with incompatible APIs. And I don't know, if you just want to play around, I suppose any of them could work if you're not worried about what the adoption of that device is going to be. I think, Tango from Google and the Project Tango development kit for AR is one of the more interesting technical things that's out there. Project Tango, if you're not familiar with it, maps out an area using a variety of sensors and lets you locate items within that, and they're stable so you can see them. It's like the thing that's promised by Magic Leap, but they're just focused on not on making it into a wearable goggles form factor, but on the intelligence of being able to map out spaces. And I think there's a consumer device coming later this year. They announced at CES from one of the Chinese phone manufacturers that's going to incorporate that stack. So I would point you that direction. Anything else? Okay, well, I'm around if anybody wants to chat. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.